Welcome to Clay's Cortex.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the next episode of Clay's Cortex, the podcast. It's been a little while. Been super busy here at Curtis Clay Training the Kiln, getting a lot of the athletes prepared and ready for their spring sports. It's probably some of the main sports I work with, which is baseball, softball. Work with other sports obviously, but that's probably the main sport. So they're getting ramped up, ready for tryouts this week, which started the first week in March. And yeah, so it's been busy. So sorry I haven't posted in a little while. And the cool thing is a lot of these kids progressed, grew, made some massive strides, and a lot of them are just equipped and ready for tryouts. But the biggest thing I wanted to kind of dial into them is this mentality aspect, right? So being prepared, not just physically, but also mentally. And I think this podcast today rolls perfect into this topic. I actually recorded another podcast, and it was good. I thought it was pretty good, but I felt like there was an episode that needed to happen before I went into that one. I think this is exactly what I want to talk about before we even get into that next podcast. So the topic today, if you didn't see it on Instagram, which is Clay's Cortex on Instagram, and then along with that too, you can watch this on YouTube and so forth. But yeah, the topic today is excellence, right? Or how to operate with excellence. That's kind of what I'm going to be diving into. I didn't really have a clever title for it and so forth, but I think this will be a great fit to dive into what's going on. And this applies to a lot of us when it comes to, how do I operate with excellence on a daily basis and so forth. So I'm going to start with reading the definition of excellence. The definition of excellence is the quality of being outstanding or extremely good. Now, you look at that definition, and there's some really good words in there that help kind of define, not for it to be a pun, define or give you an idea of what does it mean, a good starting place of what does it mean to be excellent, or what is excellence. And that is the quality of being outstanding. And then the other one is or being extremely good, or extremely good. The cool thing is, though, is if I look at the first word in that definition is the quality, right? So the quality, that's on a grading scale to some aspect, right? So if I want to look at quality and I want to get, say, a burger around here in Washington, and I wanted a high quality burger, there's a restaurant here called Tipsy Cow, really, really good, right? So that's where I would go for a quality burger. But I wouldn't go to McDonald's, right? Nothing against McDonald's. If you love McDonald's, do your thing. But quality is something that can be acquired. It is something that you can do to make it a trait of yourself or a trait of I gave the example of burger, meat, quality of food. It's crucial. So let's talk about that. But before we get into this episode, I want to ask or get you guys to think about something. And that thing I want you to think about is, what does excellence mean to you? How does operating in excellence, or what does operating in excellence mean or look like to you? I want you guys to think about that, because as we dive into the episode today, we're going to be talking about life, work, and exercise and training, obviously. But life, for me, a father, a husband, a friend, a son, right? And then also for work, a business, being a trainer, exercise professional, muscle system specialist. What does that look like? And then how I exercise, or how I believe that we should exercise, right, with excellence. So let's get you guys to think about that. Those are the topics we're going to be talking about. So the first thing you want to dive into is, or I want to dive into is, when it comes to you operating in excellence, you need to look within yourself and you need to set your standards. Set your own standards of what excellence looks like operating on a daily basis. And if we divvy that up, which I'll talk about during this podcast, if you divvy it up and think about it, that level or role of excellence is going to look different depending on the role that you're in at that moment in time, right? So setting a standard for yourself and what your goals are versus expectations, right? So for example, here at Curtis Clay Training, right? People expect to come in for a workout, right? Yeah, that's cool. But how we approach workouts here at Curtis Clay Training, especially from when I first started, was to be recognized as somebody that's different. Not different in we do weird exercises, but different in how we deliver what we do here. And that started with just me, right? So how do I deliver to somebody the difference in what we do and it being excellent, right? How can I be seen, or how can Curtis Clay Training be seen as the Tipsy Cow of training versus the McDonald's of training. Because there's a lot of McDonald's out there. There's a lot of fast food places where you can drive up real quick. It's convenient, it's quick. But Tipsy Cow gets really busy and you got to book an appointment. You've got to go in, you got to wait for a while, wait to get seated. And around here it used to be Red Robin. And Red Robin's, it's cool. Like, that's why I grew up going to high school. It was a good spot. But Tipsy Cow's burgers are really good. How can I be seen, or how can Curtis Clay Training be seen as the Tipsy Cow of training in this area? And in that analogy, it's being excellent, right? Quality food. They think about all the little details. The sauces they have there are good. Every detail's in place, right? The decor within their space is like, whoa, I get it, right? There's all these jokes about, cows and moos because it's Tipsy Cow and blah, blah, blah. How can I do that when it comes to training and operate at a high level when it comes to providing an excellent service from when somebody walks in the door here at the Kiln or Curtis Clay Training, looks at the space, sees that everything has a place, that sets the tone from when they first walk in of like, wow, okay, everything's got a place, it's clean, it's tidy, it's not just pish-posh, or everything's kind of just put together. So yeah, man, so how do you do that? And I'll tell you right now, with me, like, I'm probably my hardest critic, and I'll dive more into that in this podcast. I'm the hardest critic, and I'm very thankful for my wife, Jackie, because she continues to encourage me to not be so hard on myself. But I do think, and she's told me that because I'm so hard on myself, it's helped me get to where I am now here at Curtis Clay Training, with having a gym and so forth, and I'll dive into that later on. But let's talk about life first. All right, so I think that'd be a good place to start. So life, right? Because obviously people know I'm talking about training and so forth, but let's talk about life. For me as a husband, as a father, and as a friend and a son, how can I operate in a level of excellence in every single one of those roles throughout life? When I wake up in the morning, do I wake up with intentionality to dominate and prepare for the day? Do I wake up, and I know people don't like to wake up in the morning. I'm not a big morning person. I do get up and I'm good, ready to go. But once I get up and hit the ground, like I'm out of bed, I'm ready to go. Like I can go. But as a father and as a husband, how can I operate at a high level to where I exceed the expectations of what the norm is for a husband or a father? How can I, be as involved as a father with our kids? Getting up, changing diapers, because we got two now. He's like 2 months. He doesn't sleep very well, so that's okay. He's grown. He's a pretty big dude already, so how can I be there, not just as like a teammate, but almost as like a manager of a baseball team or a football team? Like, how can I be the CEO or GM with my wife, who's the co-GM, of being great parents to our kids? How can I, in my marriage, be not just, I'm just the other teammate. No, I'm the GM or the manager with my wife, and we're both in this marriage to excel and be excellent, right? Because marriage is a crucial thing, right? And us setting the ground rules, and not ground rules, us setting the foundation for our marriage to help prepare us to have a quality marriage that continues to evolve and grow and help us be better parents. Because, we've got to be that for our kids. We want to be that example for our kids. So how can we be excellent that way? We communicate a lot. We talk a lot. I get kind of quiet, and I think a lot within my mind. And like I said earlier in the podcast, early on, like me talking like this out loud to people, being filmed scenario is a little bit nerve-wracking to me. That's why I like having guests on the show, on the podcast, because we can just talk, like have a dialogue, right? And the camera just happens to be there. But right now I'm talking to you on the camera and so forth. So how can I operate excellence, right? How can I be intentional with what I'm doing? Then I look at work and with business, right? How can I give you a little bit, talk about Tipsy Cow, the Tipsy Cow of training in this area versus McDonald's? How can I operate at a high level to be seen as, wow, if you have a serious thing with your body when it comes to your muscular system, or you've got something weird going on, that's a place you should go, right? Because they're going to be intentional with what they're doing and going from there. Like, for example, man, I had somebody in last night, tryouts started, they were a little sore in their neck, and, went through, worked on them a little bit, did some exercise, and I was like, wait a second, let's pause, right? And I just asked, are you stressed? And they were like, yeah, I'm pretty stressed with tryouts going on and stuff like that. And I was like, maybe you just need to recover. Because like, if I pull up, this is kind of impromptu, but if I pull up a text that I got, which I can't because I'm recording on the phone, but Eric Cressy, great trainer, great guy. He put this quote out. I was on Twitter. Josh Fitch, he was on an earlier podcast. I was like, bro, you got to find me that that quote, and the quote said essentially, don't fix a fatigue problem with more exercise, essentially is what it's saying. And I butchered that. I'll put a link in the show notes, but she just needed to rest, and exercising more wouldn't have been the issue. Now, with that being the case, the mom reached out to me, which I was super grateful for, but they were like, hey, this is what's going on and blah, blah. And I thought it was somewhere else when we described it on the phone and through text and stuff, but came in, I was like, she looks really good. Could just be that her body's just stressed and needs to recover, right? And so she's like, yeah, with a lot of activity. But this girl worked her tail off this off season, right? And she took ownership in her journey. And the thing is I think that's when it comes to athletic development here in this area, we're known for equipping athletes to take control of their journey, giving them programs, educating them to help them reach their goals, checking in with them, collecting information, data to make a decision on how to adapt their program. I mean, I think that the way that we operate here, especially with like the Athlete Academy and how we work with people one-on-one, it's bar none the best in this area, right? We are continuing to get better all the time, but why is it? Because I don't market at all. There's no marketing that I do. The only marketing I do is if I buy a sign, and put on a softball field, baseball field, but I know that money goes back to the program, and that's where I like to use my money. Or like to do my advertising where it goes back to a program. I don't do general like newspaper marketing and stuff like that. So people have asked me, trainers come and ask me, how have you built Curtis Clay Training to this, where you have all this equipment, you've got a space. I don't own the space, I lease it, I rent it, but everything in here you own, right? And I was like, man, I had to think about it, right? And so gave some answers, and I realized, man, every day I try to come in and operate with excellence. And I remember I went to a class in Oklahoma City, RTS, with Tom Purvis, and when it came to talking about working with clients, trainers can work long hours, right? We have weird schedules sometimes, right? My wife's been gracious with that, but he gave this thing and it's kind of stuck with me. The client that comes in first thing in the morning, or your first session of the day, right? In your 8th session of the day, your client that comes in each hour, it's their first session of the day. It may be your 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, some of you 10th, but it's that client's first session. So how can you operate in excellence? And that really stuck with me. But now I'm going to divvy into a quote that my godfather gave me, and it relates to consistency a little bit. But he told me, he said, and I said it in an earlier podcast, I said, Curtis, you should work so hard every single day. He related this to sports and training and me playing on certain teams and wanting to make teams and be a starter and that kind of stuff. He said, you should work so hard every single day that if you take a day off, that person trying to take your spot will never catch up to you. They'll never catch up to you. That resonated with me, and I realized that I've married that throughout my entire life when it comes to me being a husband, me being a parent, when I was playing baseball, me being an athlete, when I was a student, which I feel like I'm still a student because I'm studying all the time too anyways. When it comes to me being a student of parenting, holy cow, how can I be a best parent as possible to come in and dominate every single day for our kids? Because it wasn't their choice to be here. We wanted them here. And we want to equip them for that, right? So, I just thought of a tangent. I'm not going to go that route. Sorry. Cool documentary on Netflix. I'll talk about it later. It's really good. But I've realized that quote or that thing that he said, I don't even know if I would call it a quote, but what he said to me has applied and trickled throughout my entire life. It's permeated my entire life. The homeostasis of my body and how I operate every single day, that quote has impacted me to a high level. When I show up to work, when it came to building the business, when it came to building, I guess, a brand, right, of Curtis Clay Training, and being known as different, being known as the tipsy cow in this area when it comes to athletic development, training, recovery work, building connections with medical providers, or whoever it may be, PTs, doctors, sports med doctors, so forth. How do I build those relationships to where they see me not just as a trainer? Because let's be honest, let's be real right now. The industry itself of training and exercise, the level of professionalism is so low. The expectations, right, versus standards, the expectations are so low. Oh, you look fit? Train me. Oh, you look jacked? Train me. You got great glutes. Show me your program. When you start putting forces through other people's bodies, you have to have an understanding of the system that you're working with. I'll go in a car route, right? You guys know I use a lot of car analogies, but I did a post a while back on Instagram for Curtis Clay Training _the Kiln on Instagram, and I was talking about different types of muscle and different types of cars, right? And I think I should talk about in the last podcast if I think about it. Training for life, maybe. Anywho, if you're going to sell somebody a car, you better know the ins and outs of every single car you have on that lot. If I have somebody come in that is looking to buy a car and I'm a car salesman and they tell me, hey, I need something that's going to be low maintenance, has great gas mileage, and the wear and tear on the car is not that much, so it's going to last for a long time. I'm not going to sell that person a truck as a car salesman. I'm not going to, because I know, based off their needs, these are the things they want to do. But if I sell a truck, I could make more money, right? No. 1, that's not operating excellence. 2, that's being selfish, right? 3, you're not meeting that person or that customer who's buying the car's needs. The same thing applies to training. If I better know the ins and outs of the muscular system, the skeletal system, all the joints that are related to that. Have some understanding of the nervous system and how it operates, right? And continue to learn on all those different systems, organs, right? How does the heart work? How does your liver work? How does the pancreas work? How do your kidneys work? What's impacting that? What is systemic inflammation? What is inflammation, right? Maybe a little bit about foods. I don't do any recommendations of foods. I refer out to two nutritionists in this area. They do a great job. If you're interested in that, I'll link them in the show notes. But yeah, you have to understand the system you're working with, but the level or the standard, right, of what you need to be to train somebody and get paid for that service, you're providing a service and get paid for that, is super low. And it's the wild, wild west. Well, you know what? I've developed this brand new training system. I'm going to market it, sell it online, put it on Instagram. People are like, wow, that's flashy. It looks really good. They buy it. They do it, right? Maybe they don't get the results that were promised, but they're like, it just wasn't for me. It was my fault. No, it wasn't. That's not the issue at all. The person didn't do enough upfront information or intake on you to figure out whether or not, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how you should operate, right? So as people that are training people, we need to know more about the body. We need to understand those things, because if you're not operating in excellence. And what's going to happen is you're going to have this huge fluctuation over time of client in, client out, client in, client out. That's why there's so much marketing online for fitness businesses, because the client turnover rate's high. For gyms getting trainers, it's a high turnover rate to be a trainer, exercise professional, strength coach, whatever. The turnover rate's so high at gyms because you're putting in all this time training people, and then along with that too, people that work out of gyms and are really trying to do a really good job and be above, be the cream of the crop, rise to the top, the cream rises to the top, that whole quote. If you want to be that person, you're like, dude, I'm not getting paid enough for the effort that I'm putting in. And 2, a lot of times I don't want to sell supplements to my clients. They don't need them. They need to figure out their diet. I've got to work with a nutritionist, and I want them to train appropriately over time, right? So to operate in excellence and set that standard higher for the fitness industry, it's not very high. So I thought, how can I be seen as Curtis Clay Training in this area as somebody that is above reproach, handles business, and every single day that I show up, they're getting 100% of me hour on the hour. How do I do that? So if I go back to what I said earlier, I set standards for myself, right? And the cool thing is, I'll tell you a story about Curtis Clay Training and starting out is my wife, when I first started, so I used to work at this other facility, started their sports program for training, was mainly training athletes. And I was like, I need to go start my own thing, right? 1, I was scared. And my wife was like, I feel like you're supposed to go start your own thing. And I was like, no, I'm too scared. And she was like, why are you scared, right? And that's another thing too. Here's a tangent. When it comes to operating excellence, you cannot operate or make decisions based out of fear. You can't. Because if you're always operating in fear, you will never operate in excellence, because you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You're scared to make that step, right? I was scared starting my business, but once I made that decision, I was all in. There was no plan B for me, right? So I found other courses. I went to many courses over 3 years. I probably flew once a month for 3 years to learn more, gather more information. And the cool thing on that journey is I met some really awesome people that I still keep in contact to this day, and people that I would say are professionals, handle themselves I'm excited. They operate at a level of excellence. And so I wanted to kind of talk to those people that way, right? So that was for work and for business. Like if I look at doctors, right? Like we're watching this show right now called The Resident. Really good, super intense. There's many different surgeons on that show and doctors, but you can see which ones operate in excellence. All those doctors have the same tools, same scalpels, because they're all in the same hospital. They have the same resources, but how they use those resources is what makes them excellent. How they use their mind is what separates them from everybody else and makes them excellent. And so you're in control of setting your own standards. You're in control of not letting, the area that you work in or the place that you work in or, your circumstances in life. How do I put that? You are in control with your mentality of whether you want to operate in excellence. And I want to encourage you with that. There's that quote where if you look at the world differently, the world looks different, right? And I might have butchered that quote too, but here nor there. And I think that's the biggest thing is if your mentality is to operate in excellence, no matter your scenario, no matter where you are, it's going to make a big difference, okay? So the doctors, that's a big one from there. Let me continue on. So the Curtis Clay training business, right? So if I look at that and me operating in excellence, there's a few things I had to do. I had to learn. And I continue to learn. I had to grow. And what I mean by grow is I had to stretch myself and get outside my comfort zone, right? I continue to do that all the time. Things are always changing here. Not in a crazy way. It's more of a refinement process. I've kind of got my nuts and bolts in place, but how do I deliver communication with clients, communication with parents, communication with medical providers in a more efficient manner, right? How can I do that? So I had to find out where my weak spots were so that I could operate at a higher level of excellence. So that's a big one too. So if I look at this, right? We all can operate at a level of excellence. You just have to look within yourself and set that standard. The hard part is if I'm being honest, it is hard to operate at a high level of excellence all the time. That's why I think when it comes to work especially, taking time off is great. You need to take a break, take vacations. You need to make sure you've got a couple days to recuperate, let your mind rest and so forth. That's crucial too. But operating excellence is a decision. It's a mentality. Right? And it's a decision to show up every single day. I'll never forget when we were going through premarital counseling with my wife, obviously my wife Jackie. So my wife Jackie and my godfather, I've got two godfathers, but Hutch, we were in premarital counseling and he said to me, he said, love is a decision, right? Man, I miss that guy. But love is a decision essentially, right? You have emotions, you got all this chemistry stuff going on, but then when it comes down to it, times can get tough sometimes, you get frustrated with one another, so forth. Sleep is sparse at the house right now. Communication has to be at a high level, and tones don't matter and so forth. And it's kind of a beautiful time because I feel like since having kids, it's brought Jackie and I closer together and our level of communication's gotten super high, which has grown us closer together. But if I look at and go back to what Hutch said he said, love is a decision. You decide every single day to love that person unconditionally. It's a decision. And so I thought about that. It's a decision to operate in excellence. It's a decision to get up and handle your business every single day at a high level. At a high level. And if I go back to operating that way, I'm going to go 100% operating at a high level. And if I'm at 90%, it's better than most people out there. And if I relate that to what he said in marriage, is like, hey, when you get married, it's not 50-50. Right? If you're watching this, you're seeing my hands. My hands are together. It's not 50-50. It's 100-100. So there's an overlap. So if one of y'all is at 80%, you're still overlapping. If one of y'all is at 80 and the other person's at 90, you're still overlapping. It's 100-100. So when you can operate at a high level of being at 100, if your standards are set that high, even if you're like, dude, I'm tired today, or hey, I've got a lot going on, or whatever it is, you're at 90%, you're still operating better than most of the trainers out there. You're operating better than most of the parents out there. You're operating better than if you're at your job than most people that work there. But it's because you set the standards within yourself. Like if you look at a job and a resume and so forth and the expectations or here's some of the roles you're gonna play, yeah, you should dominate those roles, right? Do those things excellently, but look above and beyond that. So if you can add that extra layer in, they're seeing like, whoa, they do some more than that. Right? Now they're like, whoa, I expect that from that person because they've set that standard for themselves. I didn't know that was possible in this role. Then what it does is build more value and they see you operating at a level of excellence, which sets you apart from everybody else. So when it comes to operating in excellence, it's a decision you make every moment of every single day. Every conversation, every word that comes out of your mouth. If I go back to how I built Curtis Clay Training, this is, if I put it simply in a nutshell, what I did was, one, continue to learn, but what I did was every single day, every single session, every single hour, I tried to operate in excellence. That's how I grew the business. But I did it over and over and over and over and over again. And the thing is I might have been like okay with that and like, oh, that's just what you do, because playing baseball, we did the same things over and over and over again. And I loved it. Hitting off of a tee, working on your swing, doing it over and over and over again. I love that stuff. And maybe that's why baseball helped prepare me for this. Softball, same thing. Basketball, same thing. Shooting free throw, whatever it is. That's why I think sports are so crucial, to help people operate in excellence, right? Prepares them for life. Fall in love with the process of becoming excellent and striving to operate in excellence every single day, right? Now I'm going to leave you with this quote, all right? And I'm recording this on my phone, so I can't pull it up, but there's a guy named Davis Brendel. He works at Landau Performance. Great guy. He's also a photographer. Just found that out. He's got some skills, right? So great strength coach out there. He's solid dude. I haven't met him in person. We connected through Instagram, through common people that I met going to class out there. The family, I guess you could say, he married into. Awesome people, man. Awesome people. And I got really close with the lady. She's not a lady. She's younger than me. His wife's sister's husband. I know it's confusing. I was really close with him when I went to a class out in Denver. And I miss that guy. He's a good dude. But Davis sent me this quote about Landau Performance. And he said, essentially, we want our guys to do the ordinary things exceptionally well, right? And hopefully I didn't butcher what that said. But to me, it's like operating in excellence might not be flashy. Operating in excellence might not mean you've got the sickest Instagram account. Operating in excellence might not be that you're always on as a parent, showing other parents that I'm amazing and so forth. Operating in excellence is doing the ordinary things exceptionally well and doing it over and over and over again. And if you do that, you will start to find that becomes almost an essence of you. That's how I operate. You start to realize, man, I'm just doing this. It's just what I do. It may take time to make that a habit, but then all of a sudden it's like, that's just who I am now. That's a part of my essence. It's not a role that I play. I'm not going to turn it on and turn it off. That's how I operate all the time. So if you can make operating in excellence a part of your essence of who you are, not just a role that you play, it will shift the outcome of everything that you do in life, in work, with your exercise program, which I actually didn't even talk about that. But operating excellence is a decision, and you guys can do it. And it takes time. And enjoy the process of getting there. So with that being said, I hope this encourages you to think about what it means to be excellent, or how to operate excellence in every aspect of your life. There may be some areas that you're like, hey, this is where I need to operate excellently. I can chill out a little bit, right? But don't expect to get ahead and get an excellent result if you're operating at bare minimum or mediocre to help you get to excellence, because it's not going to happen. And then you're gonna be like, well, what the heck? I tried really hard. You did try, but you didn't look within yourself, set your standards, and truly reach for a level of excellence. So hopefully that encourages you guys that excellence and operating that way, operating with excellence, is a decision, and all of us can do it. So hopefully this podcast encourages you with that. Hopefully some of my stories made sense. Thanks for listening. This is the next episode of Clay's Cortex, the podcast. You can watch it on YouTube. You can also listen to it on Podbean or on Apple iTunes, the podcast, not iTunes. Yeah, I think it's iTunes, the podcast app. Check me out on Instagram, Clay's Cortex. And then if you want to watch it too, if you go to curtisclaytraining.com, there's a Clay's Cortex page with the description of the show and so forth. I'll put some of the show notes in there. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you again for listening. Curtis Clay, signing out.